it is not too late to get into Formula One. Like, comment, download, save this video because I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get up to speed. Formula One is an international motor racing competition which is governed by the FIA. The first Formula One championship was in 1950, but under the FIA there are multiple championships. FIA have a set of regulations that Formula One must adhere to. This is the financial regulations, so that's where you'll hear about the cost cap, for example. We've got the technical regulations, so everything about how the car should be built, and the sporting regulations, which determine how the sport itself will be run. Within Formula One there are two championships, so we've got the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship. For the Constructors' Championship there are 10 teams, and within each team there are two main drivers. The aim of the Constructors' Championship is for the two drivers within that team to get the most points over any other team within that season. We'll come on to the season and points in a second, but essentially this championship shows who has built the best car. The Drivers' Championship is every driver for himself, so it is an individual competition. The driver with the most points at the end of the season will get the Drivers' Championship. Races are not just about pure pace, it's all about strategy, beating your components, overtaking, pit stops. Behind the scenes there are a whole host of people determining how that driver's race should go, and also any other contingency in case of any issues or incidents. Onto the season itself. So this season we have a huge amount of races, 24 Grand Prix, and this starts on the 2nd of March in Bahrain and finishes on the 8th of December in Abu Dhabi. Now you might hear the terms double header or triple header. This is when races are back to back or back to back to back, meaning there are no week breaks in between. We also have 6 sprint events which I'll come on to, but the first 2 races of the season, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, are on a Saturday instead of a Sunday because of Ramadan. Each Grand Prix we go to, the track layout is completely different, whether it's anti-clockwise, clockwise, the number of straights, the number of turns, DRS zones, the elevation as well, the track grips, whether it's a day race, a night race, a traditional circuit, a street circuit. Each Grand Prix is completely unique, but what they do have in common is that they run for up to 305 kilometers long, with the exception of Monaco, which is 260 kilometers. What this means is that because each track is different in terms of lap length, the number of laps we have across each Grand Prix will differ. And even though there is a set number of laps, there is still a time limit of 2 hours to complete a race. If there is something like an incident or a red flag, that number will be 3 hours. There are 2 weekend formats, one for the traditional race weekend and one for the sprint race weekend. Let's start with the traditional race weekend. So Thursday we'll have media duties, that's press conferences for the drivers and team principals alike. Friday we'll have free practice 1 and free practice 2, which is just checking the setup of the car. Saturday morning we'll have free practice 3 followed by qualifying in the afternoon. That will set the grid for Sunday's main race. On a normal race weekend, Saturday qualifying is split into 3, Q1, Q2, Q3, and that's 18 minutes long, 15 minutes long and 12 minutes long. How it works is that all 20 drivers will be entered into Q1. They will all be trying to set their fastest lap, but the slowest 5 will be knocked out and they will not advance into Q2. The rest of the 15 drivers will make it into Q2. Those drivers again will be trying to set their fastest lap. The slowest 5 will be knocked out of Q2. The remaining 10 will progress into Q1. The remaining 10, they will be trying to set their fastest lap again. The aim is to get pole position, meaning they will be starting at the front of the grid for Sunday's race. Onto the sprint weekend format. We have 6 spread across the year. So Friday is free practice 1 followed by the sprint shootout. Sprint shootout is essentially a shorter qualifying session and it's been abbreviated to SQ1, SQ2, SQ3, and the sessions themselves are shorter, 12, 10 and 8 minutes long. Sprint shootout sets the grid for Saturday's main sprint event. That is the 100-kilometer dash. After that, on Saturday we'll have a normal qualifying session which will again set the grid for Sunday's main race. Let's move on to points. In the Sunday main race, drivers who finish in the top 10 will receive points. I've got the allocation on the screen right here, and any driver who finishes in the top 10 and also gets the fastest lap of the race, they will receive 1 extra point. Second way to get points is in the sprint race itself, so that 100-kilometer dash that we just spoke about. So the top 8 will score points. The person who finishes first will get 8 points, and then that decreases by 1 point by the time we get to that 8th driver. In a sprint weekend, 34 points are on offer. Let's talk about tyres. So for dry weather, Pirelli, who are the manufacturer of the tyres, will produce a set of 5 compounds for the teams to use. This is the C1 to the C5. So the C1 is the most durable tyre, but it's got the least amount of grip. As we get down to the C5, it's got the most grip, but it's the least durable. Each race weekend, Pirelli will allocate 3 out of the 5 tyres for the teams to use, and this will be the hard, medium and soft. Hard is the white tyre, medium is the yellow, and soft is the red. For example, for the first race of the season, Bahrain, Pirelli have said that the C1 will be the hard, the C2 will be the medium, and the C3 will be the soft, but for Saudi Arabia, they've changed that, so the hard will be the C2, medium will be C3, and the soft will be the C4. Pirelli will basically decide which 3 will be best for that track track, you know, based on the track layout, the asphalt, the temperatures, so on and so forth. During the race, the teams will have to use at least 2 of the compounds, so a hard and a medium, for example, so they will have to make a pit stop at least once. In wet weather, green intermediate tyres can be used, so this is when there's not that much water, a bit of dry and wet, but for full wet weather, we've got the blue tyres, and these will have, as you see, more grooves. That's to displace more water. Talking of pit stops, as I mentioned, this has to be done at least once for the race to change tyres, and this takes more than 20 people because it has to be done in the most efficient and quickest way possible. I'm talking less than 2.5 seconds for the whole pit stop process, and Pirelli actually do hold a competition for the season in terms of who's got the best pit stops on average. The world record for the pit stop is McLaren with 1.8 seconds that they got at the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix. And some terminology for you to remember: when a driver is called in for a pit stop, you will typically hear their race engineers say box box on the radio. They will then make their way to their pit box, and race engineers are used for a variety of reasons. Pit stops can also be used for other reasons. It's not just for tyre changing. It can be used to fulfill a time penalty or to, you know, change parts on the car like the front wing. Moving on to penalties, I won't go into too much depth. There is some information on the screen for you. I've done a separate video on this in the past, but essentially drivers can get penalties for a couple of different reasons. And with these penalties, drivers can also get points on their super license. So these are called penalty points. A super license is needed to race in Formula 1. There are a couple of rules and requirements for a driver to receive that, but essentially if they've done something bad, they can get those points. Drivers are allowed 12 penalty points on their license before they get a race ban, and each penalty point on its own will last 12 months before being wiped. During a race, you will see a number of signals and flags. So let's start off with a very important signal. So before the race actually starts, the drivers will do what is called a formation lap. Essentially, they go around the lap once, just making sure that everything is set up properly, their tyres are warmed, and they will be making their way to their grid box. What you will then see is 5 lights being switched on individually. As soon as they all disappear at once, that indicates the start of the race. In terms of flags, the one that you will see the most is the checkered flag, and this indicates the end of the race. The others are typically shown by the marshals at the side of the track. So we've got a green flag. This indicates the track is clear. The single yellow flag means that there is a hazard, slow down. The double yellow means that there's a serious incident, slow down immediately, and this is often followed by a virtual safety car or a safety car. The virtual safety car doesn't bring a physical safety car out onto the track itself. It doesn't bunch up the drivers. It just means that they have to slow down all to the same speed. Physical safety car is used for more serious incidents. The drivers will be following the safety car. It does bunch the cars up because the safety car is the one that is dictating the speed. Of course, during both periods, no overtaking is allowed. The red flag means that something very serious has happened. The drivers need to slow down immediately and go back to the pits. If you are being shown a blue flag, this means that someone behind you is quicker. They are going to lap you, so you must let them through. You don't want to be shown a black flag because this means that you have been disqualified, and a black flag with an orange circle means that the car has got damage or a mechanical issue and that you need to go into the pits to get that sorted. A white flag means that there is a slower vehicle ahead. Half black, half white indicates unsportsmanlike behaviour, and then the red and yellow striped means a slippery surface ahead. Onto a term you'll hear a lot, DRS, drag reduction system, and this is used to aid overtaking. Now, on the rear wing of a car, there will be a flap that opens and closes, and when it is open, so when the DRS is open, this basically means that there's less air resistance and less drag, so the car goes faster. DRS can only be opened when the driver is within 1 second of the car in front, and we do have detection points to highlight when that 1 second can be calculated. That was your whistle stop tour into Formula 1. Your life will be consumed by it if you do get into it, so fair warning. You know, F1 is not an easy sport. There are only 20 drivers on the grid, so it can be very cutthroat, and the drivers have to train to, you know, manage the times that they spend in their car, manage the G-forces, the cold weather, the hot weather, the training in the saunas, for example. They have to manage all of that whilst also managing braking, accelerating, the buttons on the steering wheel, being talked to by the radios, potential incident flags. There's so much that goes into it. Formula 1 is such a team sport. We've not just got the race engineers, we've got the people on the pit wall, people in the garage, people back at the factory, we've got doctors, trainers, psychologists, so many people to try and get those 2 trophies, the championship one and the drivers one. I absolutely can go into more depth on anything we've discussed or anything that I've not mentioned, so do let me know. As I mentioned, it's never too late to get into Formula 1. Just anything you need, I'm your girl.